Welcome back, everybody. It's Dean here, and I'm with James Rimmer of Expense Reduction Analysts. And James, I've known how long now? 2 years? A year?
Yeah, getting on for that sort of time. At least 18 months, Dean, since my early days, since I joined ERA.
So, James, tell us what you do at ERA.
What do I do at ERA? There's a question. Well, Dean, you know what it's like at the moment for business leaders to face spiraling costs that are just taking away their profits. And I guess that's where me and the team come in. And what makes us really special is our cost specialists. And I'm sure we'll come on to it shortly. But in my old world, we had lots of consultants that came in and tried to help you, but didn't know enough about their topics. And what really makes me and my colleagues special is that deep knowledge of knowing exactly where to look for an organization. So look, we can help you stop throwing these profits away by spending far too much with some of your suppliers. Let's help you. So I'm now a consultant with ERA and one of a number across the UK that help businesses reduce their overhead costing.
So when we're talking about reducing cost, let's just play devil's advocate for a minute. Surely
we've only just started, Dean. You can't do that straight.
I have to be nice for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, well, let's just ask. I mean, any business looking to save money, there's an incentive to do it from a profit point of view, but right now there's an incentive to do it from just the fact that inflation's eating everything away. Where do you see the inflation picture going? I mean, can you predict it? Do you have any kind of guide where it's going? Or?
Oh, blimey, Dean. Well, look, we know inflation in terms of CPI inflation is going to hit 11 to 12% this calendar year, and the next hike will be in October as we see the energy price cap or not cap hit households. And I think for businesses, many wish they only had inflation of that. For businesses, some of the organizations I work with, energy alone's gone up 500%. I mean, there's no energy cap for businesses. So if you're a manufacturer that relies on energy or indeed any food goods that would have come from Ukraine or Russia, you're seeing inflation of 300, 400, 500%. It's nowhere near the CPI inflation we talk about and see on the news. So where will inflation go? I mean, at the moment, the feel is that we're going to start seeing a recession, and a recession brings with it some strange benefits, which generally slows inflation. But of course, what it also does is wipe out the economy for 18 months. So what we're going to see over the rest of this year is going to be a really interesting time. And to be honest, whatever happens in Ukraine at the moment, we're going to see the UK economy suffer more than many of the others across the world.
Okay, so that's not a positive picture.
You didn't? No, you never asked for a positive picture, Dean. You just asked for where inflation's going to go, and there is a positive inflation message from all of this, Dean. That actually recession, as tough as it is, history suggests those businesses that are best placed to weather that storm come out of the recession in a really strong position. Every recession we've looked at over the last 100 years, what follows is a huge rebound of growth. And if your business is well placed for that, you're in a really strong position. So there is definitely some green shoots of optimism. It's making sure you can live throughout that recession period of around about 18 months to get to the other side. But there absolutely are some positives to get to that point.
Okay, so that's good. That's good news. So when a business is, now I'm going to throw the tricky question on you. When a business is looking to protect itself from a recession, what are some of the things that you would advise them to do in terms of their budgets and all of that stuff, beyond the obvious of, be careful what you decide to spend? What about what they're already spending?
Well, look, the flip side of that, Dean, and history is really clear on this. History is also be really careful what you slash and burn. And the reason for that, and I guess we're seeing this with the airports at the moment, if you shed a lot of your staff because you're worried about the kind of the current position, what you do is take your eye off the ball for the 18-month period that comes. And when growth comes back, you're not best placed to do it. So what we always recommend, and certainly what I recommend with my clients, is review your spend, but look at it from an operational efficiency point of view. What can you do to be more efficient rather than what can you slash and burn, which unfortunately is what some organizations do. And they're the ones that really struggle to rebound following a recession.
Like a hatchet job, basically.
Yeah. And to be fair, I've been a CFO. I've been there looking at budgets and starting to put lines through stuff. And unfortunately, what happens when you do that in isolation, that's cutting your marketing budget, your R&D budget. What you start to do is cut those things that it's difficult to turn back on quickly. And those organizations that are really ready for the recession now, what they're going to do is steal your competitors' customers, steal your competitors' assets, steal, the best staff. They will absolutely be ready for it. And, it really is a case of being ready and remembering that generally recession does not last too long. 18 months is a storm that you can weather as long as you've got a plan to how you get to the other side. But yeah, operational efficiency is without doubt the best thing you can do.
And it is a tough one, though, knowing like we had a recession because of COVID, but it was kind of like a cotton wool recession, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And actually, what we saw until the terrible events in Ukraine was the rebound of the recession to things, post-COVID, if we can use that phrase, starting to get better. And we saw that bounce back. And ultimately, that bounce back got thrown off by the events in Ukraine. And unfortunately, that has had such an impact on the world, on Ukraine, but also on global supply chains and the many things we rely on. Fertilizer, so much of that comes from Ukraine and Russia. The price of that's gone through the roof, which means next year's prices for crops will be at all-time highs. So again, when we start looking into next year, we can already see price increases still continuing.
So do you see, because the only reference point, and I was talking about this over the weekend with somebody, there's a generation of people living today who've never seen circumstances like this before. Because even the last time this happened with hyperinflation and recession and all of this stuff, there's the financial crash, which was one thing. And that was like, 12 years ago, something like that.
And a bit to 2008, and you're absolutely right, Dean. What we see is people don't have experience of inflation, and kind of find their way through it, and now they don't have experience of recession. And by no means is a recession guaranteed. It feels like it's heading that way at the moment, and it seems unlikely to not happen. But you're right, lack of experience is a challenge, and because of that, the ability to make a knee-jerk response becomes a greater risk, and in some ways that's what me and my colleagues are trying to help people look at and say, actually, rather than taking a wrong decision, what can you do internally within your own organization at the moment to be as efficient as you possibly can? That should be your focus, not a knee-jerk response that you might live to regret.
And we're seeing that with the bank, really. I mean, if we think of, I don't want to get too heavy in this, but I think it's useful. If you look at what happened in 2008, and then you look at the 70s, late 70s with hyperinflation, they controlled inflation with interest rates.
Exactly.
And interest rates went ballistic. But we've come from a space where the government pulled back on in 2008, really brought the interest rates down to a level we've never seen before. And we've been living with these tiny interest rates. The problem is that if the Bank of England starts hiking that up, people's mortgages, there's been a massive boom in buying second houses and all this stuff. You can make a load of money renting out houses because the interest rates are so low. if you've got a deal at whatever rate, I can't remember what it was, the lowest rate you could get, but if you've got a 1% deal, say, or a 1.5% deal, and then the Bank of England starts to jack that up, every 0.25% is a huge shift in the profit margins.
Absolutely, Dean, and you're right. The economic response in a perfect world is if inflation's high, you pull the lever of interest rates going up, and actually, unfortunately, interest rates going up is likely to be the thing that just pushes us into a recession. There's only so many levers, and you've got to make the decisions in the long run. And of course, for businesses in particular, if you have high levels of debt, you are very vulnerable in a recession, which is one of the worries. If you're an organization now thinking we've got a lot of debt already, all that's going to happen is the cost of that debt will go up because interest rates will continue to increase, and your sales will fall because it's a recession. So it gets more and more difficult than ever before to meet those repayments. And again, that's why that focus is operational efficiency, because we know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, and that's one of the key lessons actually from recession. You don't need to wait for someone to say we're in a recession to respond. We know what's going to happen. We know where we're heading. Interest rates will continue to go up without a doubt. Inflation should come down, but this is unusual inflation because it's driven by world events, not necessarily the usual events. And every period of recessions had its own unusual events. The crash of 2008, the Gulf War before that, all of these things have been unusual events that have triggered effectively an economic crisis.
So when a business is looking at driving that efficiency, surely they're looking at, just to be tricky with you, just so that surely they can find that saving themselves, right? Why would they need you?
It's a good question, Dean. Why would they? And it goes back to what I said at the start. And I've been a CFO for 10 years, and of a very large multi-million pound and indeed towards the end multi-billion pound organization. So I know what it's like. And what generally happens, and all CFOs do the same, we kind of look at our long list of spend and we think, we've done that, or that's not that large and stuff. And what happens is most organizations focus hard on their direct costs. Mm-hmm. And what they then don't focus on is their overhead costs. And that's where me and my team come in, because, a CFO can't have the expertise to look at all of their costs, and they need to focus on what they know the best. So if you're an organization, a manufacturer, you will know inside and out the price of steel, your raw materials, and what that costs you. You probably won't have one eye on some of the costs of some of the smaller consumables. And that's where my team come in, because that's all they do every single day. Our consumables expert, our fuel expert, they live and breathe those areas, so they can look at someone's costs and say, wow, you've got a great deal, or wow, we can help you get a better deal, and let us talk to you about some of the process improvements you can put in place as well. So yeah, you can do it yourself, but it will take longer, and without doubt it will reduce the level of savings, because all that generally happens is internally an organization says we'll get free quotes and then we'll go with the cheapest. What we do is we know every day what the price we got last week for a similar organization, so we know what the target price is and how to get to that point. And as I say, generally we'll say 30 to 40% more than an in-house team can do, and generally deliver savings about 5 months before. And if you're heading into a recession, 5 months makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because obviously if I was doing it here and I said, all right, guys, I want to save money on this, I save money on this, and save money on this, and save money on this, somebody has to expend energy to do that, and it's not their day job.
And that's why generally we can do it. I say probably about 5 months quicker, and that's doing a full process as well. And yeah, of course, anyone you get within your organisation to do it, Dean, just like many, they have to stop doing their day job, which might not be the best use of their time. And I guess from my old world, I was not always a big fan of external consultants, if I'm honest. And now I absolutely can see the benefits, because the right external consultants can give you the shortcuts you just can't do yourself. They can quite quickly say, right, come on, we know exactly where to look. Just like you do with your clients, Dean. You can help them say, look, I can diagnose your problem and help you resolve it much quicker than you can do yourself, if indeed you can do it yourself. And let's face it, there's some things that you just can't, and that's exactly where that operational efficiency is the focus.
So when you're talking about that, I mean, some people's experience of consultants, and I'll just be honest, some people's experience of consultants is they come in, they charge you 25, 50 grand, and then say, there you go, I've saved you 25 grand.
and having been a CFO in the NHS, there's probably not a large consultancy firm I've not had the pleasure of working with. And unfortunately, if I'm honest, I would say that's true from some of my experiences. I guess what is different about me and my colleagues, and in reality, that's why I'm part of this organisation as well, that are twofold. One, it's not a generalist, it's not a general person who just looks and says, oh, if you thought about doing this, what you end up with is an absolute expert who can diagnose and say, right, we have looked at your fuel spend, we have looked at your, your cost of your consumables in your organization, and we can see quite clearly what's going wrong and how we can overcome that. And the other side is, Dean, which I really like about our model, if we can't find savings, there's no cost. So, there's no large...
There's no big consultancy fee to tell you, actually, there's nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's not in the team's interest to flog a dead horse. They'll absolutely say, look, and, and some of my clients that I work with, sometimes I looked at, my waste specialist, only the other week we were looking at, and actually my client's probably got the best waste deal we've ever seen ever. And that, but at least they now know that. So the feedback was, you need to be really nice to your supplier, extra nice, because ultimately you've got a really good deal that we couldn't, with all of our buying power, which is around about £800 million in the UK, all of that buying power, we still couldn't get you a better deal. Be nice to those suppliers. And the client was really grateful for that, because sometimes you think, oh, what have I got? And knowing that, it really helps, particularly, say, when you're going into a recession, all of a sudden that client goes, right, we know we don't need to look at waste because we've got a great deal. And, there is really something about the looking at every single cost and being really clear, because what happens, as I said, is, people just sort of look down a list of spend and say, yeah, I'll leave that. Or we looked at it 6 years ago and we didn't find it then, or, we don't really want to change the supplier. And let's face it, changing suppliers are a pain. And what we find is, probably 60% of the time our clients stay with the same supplier. We get them to sharpen the pencil because we know exactly where to look. And the other time, actually, we'll say, look, you can stay with your current supplier and save, 5%, or you can go with a supplier that we've worked with for many years, following a procurement, and you can save 20%. And the choice is there. And what generally happens is people think, oh, we'll take the small saving, and then a couple of years on go, oh, now we're ready for the kind of the new supplier. Let's do that. Because it might seem like pain, but actually, generally that 20% saving also comes with process improvements, which just make a huge difference to an organization.
So one of the things, I was having a conversation with somebody, member of our team actually, about, I know this is about energy, but I think it's common in a lot of scenarios, given that prices are where they are right now. There's two schools of thoughts, isn't there? There's locking in now so it doesn't get worse. But then there's the other thought of, what if it comes down and we're locked in? Are you seeing people stuck with that dilemma at the moment?
So, I mean, the good thing is, if I was talking to one of my clients, rather than James gives a view, our energy expert would give a view and join the call, and all our energy expert Richard does every single day of his life is look at the energy market. What I would say is there's less of an energy market than there used to be. So there used to be a very, you could go out to procurement and get very wildly different rates. That's less of a case now. And I think it's true of anything going into the recession at the moment. What you can't do is hope for the best. Close your eyes and think, I'll I'll just suffer energy and it'll get better in 2 years because you're hoping for the best, which is not a great management tactic. And there is something about, speaking to an expert, so be that Richard for energy with me and my colleagues, that says, what are you seeing? But of course, you're looking into a crystal ball of the unknown. What my advice, would be lock in at the moment. Businesses can get 6-month, year, 2-year deals. What a 2-year deal does, and obviously every organization is different, gives certainty. And at the moment, having some certainty is much better than not, because there is still potential when we get into the winter for more challenges to come around energy. And it seems unlikely that some magic bullet will resolve that over the next 18 months to 2 years.
Okay. So really it's about making a decision and having certainty on the decision, would you say, at the moment, bring in some certainty because it could go worse. So when we're thinking about business, one of the big things that everybody gets frustrated with in our home life, but it's common in business as well, is subscriptions. They're a brilliant idea, but also a flipping nightmare as well, because they creep in and you can end up, I did one the other day and turns out we've got 2 lots of subscription for the same piece of software, right? And they just inflate. And I suppose this is common across lots of businesses, that there's these little add-on costs of, maybe not 20 quid a month, but there are these 20 quid a month, and you go, oh, it's only 20 quid a month, and then suddenly you realize you got 3.5 grand a month of them.
I think, Dean, probably with the client base, and ERA works with relatively small companies right through to large household brands like IKEA, DFS, and BT. So we span quite a range. And I guess the thing that's probably the most similar to what you're saying, but slightly different, is where people have a number of suppliers to provide the same goods within an organization. So what generally happens is we might do a janitorial project. And the team will start to look at invoices. And what you find quite quickly, if someone's got 3, 4, 5, 6 sites within their business, each site is somehow many years ago decided on their own supplier for janitorial items, their own supplier for catering, consumables, stationery, and all of the other bits and pieces. And there's no overall control. So what we then generally do is say, right, you've got 20 odd suppliers sometimes, all charging different prices. You'd be amazed when we present back the CFO's face when they realize they've got so many suppliers and different prices from all of them. And then, the best way of dealing with that is a procurement that covers all of it and start again, which does generate, good savings. You get an economy of scale, but it's a bit like those subscriptions that you don't realize. And it's quite difficult for an organization to look down their P&L and really get a feel for how many suppliers they've got that are overlapping. It's only when our team come in and know the suppliers off by heart that can quite quickly get to that. And I guess it's similar to those subscriptions that you just throw money away. And as I said, the difference sometimes in unit prices shocks the CFOs to the point of, right, come on, let's get on and do it. And it, to be fair, it's a pain job to do, because my team go through thousands of lines of invoices to present that level of information back. And Dean, that comes back to you could do it yourself, but it takes a long time if you're not set up to do it.
And if you're doing it in silos in different departments, you may not even see the variance, because you could get reports back in silos.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting, because the research into recessions, something that surprised me actually was the best thing to do is have decentralized control. So generally as the CFO, your first thought is, right, let's bring every decision to the highest level and ban everything we can. And the feedback from history is no, decentralized decision making, because those decentralized units can see best what the customers want and are much more able to respond at an agile level.
Mm-hmm.
The only bit that misses from that is the helicopter view that makes sure the organization's doing the right things at the right level, which might be some of those bits around what can we consolidate our spend, particularly where organizations have bought subsidiaries over the years, they've added them on and not really brought the consistency across. And, you know, many of the time when we work with clients, they're trying to unpick years of various divisions, various management buyouts that have added on businesses, and, you know, trying to consolidate those is a big job, but actually brings rewards to the customers ultimately.
Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a thing to throw in here. Where do you see the whole Brexit challenge in all of this? How does it play into it, or does it exacerbate it? Is it another issue just over there? How does that play into what we're dealing with right now? So
when you look at the drivers of inflation at the moment, one of the biggest drivers of inflation is pay inflation. And I know there's lots of people who'll be listening to this now thinking my pay's only gone up 5% and, you know, inflation's at 6 or 7, but we're still starting that conversation with my pay's only gone up by 5%. You know, there's still quite large in isolation pay rises. And the reason for that is we're seeing real shortages in the employment market. And because of that, we've had to push prices up, because what generally happens is staff move from one organisation to the other in search of a pay rise. To retain staff, we've pushed up pay. So Brexit is a big part of that, Dean. What we're seeing is far less availability of staff from the EU. We've actually seen an increase in staff from non-EU countries, actually, but that aside, it's not enough to impact the loss in Brexit. So we have less staff. And did you know most of the seasonal fruit pickers are from Ukraine? It's wow. not just some of the Brexit impacts, it's wider, which again is pushing up the price of food. So that without doubt is giving us challenges and driving inflation. And I think for some of the hospitality businesses in particular, we're seeing a lot of the be kind messages out there, the please bear with us, we're short on staff. And of course, when your staff then say we're going to leave, you then start throwing money at the problem, saying, no, we'll pay you more. And of course, all that does is then push the business to the brink of what's my margin. So it's a real tough one. But without doubt, Brexit quietly has had an impact. It's just been lost in the noise of COVID and unfortunately the Ukraine issues.
So when we think, I've been watching interviews recently with James Callaghan, the Labour Prime Minister in the 70s, who was kind of fighting kind of hyperinflation. And they put in wage controls. They stopped you increasing pay. And we're now in a, you know, I don't, you know, the average income on the UK, and I think, you know, the private sector, you know, let's strip out the Starbucks and the big corporates here, the behemoths who make billions. Let's just leave them to one side, because the vast majority of jobs in this country are actually with, you know, small to medium-sized enterprises. And you go one step further and drill it down, and I think it's something like 90% of all businesses in the UK are solopreneurs. Now, if we just look at that and go, well, hang on a minute, let's ignore these big companies. It's quite tough for a small business to combat inflation, because they're being pincered on all sides. You know, you look at somewhere like Starbucks, they make huge margins on what they do. And most businesses are not making 700-800% margins or 700-800% markup. They're not making 80% margin on stuff. It's an unpopular thing to say, but a lot of employees may not appreciate the difficulty this places on a business when they're being squeezed in all directions. You know, if you're declaring £1 billion profit, like, you know, I think BT's declared 1.9 billion profit. It's like, it's hard to say, oh, we can't afford a pay rise.
It is, and we saw this with Rolls-Royce the other day. Actually, the kind of the offering the bonus payments, and the unions sort of voted against it. And I think it's a real tough one. I think one of the factors that would slow inflation without doubt is wage controls. I don't for a minute imagine Boris will announce that on TV anytime soon. Although you never say never.
It all knocks on, doesn't it? It all knocks on, because if I'm sure everybody deserves a pay rise after what's happened the last few years. Really, everybody deserves a bit more money in their pocket. But if you look at it, if we start to go, well, hang on a minute, the train drivers need more money, the ambulance drivers need more money, everybody needs more money, you end up where, one, you exacerbate the kind of great resignation where people are going, I'm going to move because somebody's going to give me more money. So you exacerbate the fact that some of the businesses just can't fight the race of the big companies. But also, then the companies that do give the raise go, well, we need to increase prices to cover it.
Absolutely, and it is a tough one. I mean, what I always advise any of my clients to do really is look at heavily incentivized bonus payments because they don't bake in a level of inflation. But if the company delivers X, Y, Z and has done well, then sharing that with employees is a really good incentive. So that's always a really good place to look at, and it does find a balance for as many people as possible. But you're right, Dean. The businesses only have so many choices. If you put prices up, you can lose customers, and I guess all of this is why we're starting to talk about recession more and more, because ultimately households are seeing costs go up. I mean, my food delivery that came a few hours ago, I can believe what I got for what it cost, and I'm not alone in that. And households are making tough decisions. We've seen Netflix for the first time ever, see the first quarter of reduction in subscribers because households are saying we need to cut back. People will be cutting back on large household appliance investments. So that's what's now starting to impact on consumer confidence, and ultimately will probably take us towards recession. So all of this is linked. If it was me, I would probably think the government could probably do more around the energy cap. I mean, ultimately, energy caps are the ones that are hitting most people, and for some households, I mean, I was lucky, I did a 2-year deal. My hit will be next February, so it's not just a straightforward in October every household feels the same pain. It depends on fixed rates, but what we will see is without doubt the economy shrink as a result of all of this challenge. And I think for whether it's businesses or individuals, it is about looking to see what sensible decisions can be made within a household or a business budget to be as efficient as they can. And checking your own bank account as an individual is a cracking place to start.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, that cost of coffee once, twice, 3 times a week, or even a day for some people, it adds up, as do all of those subscriptions that you talked about, Dean. There are stuff people can do to weather the storm, because I use the phrase weather the storm because it is a storm to get through to the other side. In 18 months, things will calm down. It just takes some time to get to that point.
Yeah, it's a lot of strain on people, though, isn't it? After 2 years of we have to just get through this, it's then basically another 2 years to get through this.
Oh, without doubt, Dean. I mean, you can't help but feel for those families that are thinking like literally on the breadline, and those families that were just about okay. The energy costs, etc., has pushed them over, and we're going to be heading towards Christmas just at the time that the energy cap's going to have the next hike. This is a real worrying time for many families and individuals, and the sad time with recession also sees a lot of job losses as well. And I said at the start, not making knee-jerk reactions, but some organizations will sadly have to reduce their headcount. So all of that is just happening at the wrong time. And certainly I think the government should do more to support kind of households, particularly around debt finance, debt coaching, make sure the support that's needed, because there's going to be a lot of worry out there as we head towards the end of this calendar year.
But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you're kind of helping businesses go, let's get ready for this without making $100,000 commission, without consultancy fee, without delivering any value. You're all about kind of finding the places to save money.
Yeah, I mean, what we do is absolutely about finding value, and finding value that organizations wouldn't be able to do themselves. And without doubt, an organization that is well run, no matter how good it is, external support can often find some savings that just not aware of. And many of my clients think, wow, actually we never knew XYZ existed until you and your team came along. And we see that time and time again. But it is about operational efficiency and doing the right things, not just blindly losing staff and being sort of those knee-jerk responses, because that's where you're just unable to seize the opportunities, because opportunities might be your competitors doing the wrong thing. Now, if your competitors start to lose customers because they've cut back on quality, you need to be best placed to do that. If you've got rid of all of your staff, you're unable to do that. So it is really about making the right decisions and being as efficient as as can possibly. And that's why I think we cover 70 or 80 cost areas. Pretty much every overhead you can imagine, from insurance to fuel to fleet to everything in between. Me and the team do, and that can really help an organisation, because it's not always what it's the things you don't know that catch you out.
So James, how do you work? What's the best way people can get in touch with you if they go, do you know what, we just need to get somebody in to sort this out for us?
Well, I'd always happily have a conversation with people, and like all things, I'll always steer people in the right way if I can't help, because that's what I've done. So I've been a CFO a long time, so always happy to help. Best thing to do is either find me on LinkedIn, James Rimmer. You will definitely be able to find me. There's not many James Rimmers out there, or just drop me an email, which is jrimmer@expensereduction.com.
Cool. James, thank you so much for joining me for my unscripted questions.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of tough ones, Dean, but I expected that. And
I didn't give you any prep, so well done on that, especially with the prickly questions.
No, Dean, that's great, much appreciated. And to be fair, just thank you for all you and the guys do at Maverick as well. I've got to say, I think as much as I'm saying organisations need our support, actually, what the great support you and your team do as well, actually makes a real difference to those of us who, try and use LinkedIn, and some of us have got much better through your support than others. So, can only.
I'll pay you later for saying that.
Yeah.
Cool. James, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, I'll put James's details around wherever you're listening, watching. So do go find him, connect with him, hit the bell. And you can DM him or email him if you're curious about how you can save money. And it's a win-win, basically, isn't it, James?
It absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely. So no win, no fee, which sounds rubbish, but actually it means we have to work really, really hard on your behalf to find savings. So It absolutely is a win-win.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, James.